Hi everyone, so in this video we're going to be discussing aspirin, cyclooxygenase, abbreviated to COX, prostaglandins, and inflammation and the relationship between these. So it's important to note first our classes of essential fatty acids. We're going to be touching on these today. So our omega-6 fatty acids listed there and our omega-3 fatty acids. Now these are called essential because the body cannot create these. We need to intake these from our diet. And it's important to note that they are parent compounds of each class. So on the left in bold we see linoleic acid, and on the right in bold we see alpha-linolenic acid. And so these are taken in from diet, and then a cascade is kind of created, shown there with the arrows beneath them, where they give rise to longer chain derivatives, and we get some other omega fatty acids created from these, as well as the other amino acids such as EPA and DHA can also be obtained from diet. So it's kind of a dual component there, but these are our omega fatty acids listed here. And we'll touch on this in more detail, but just kind of a brief overview. It's going to be important to know that our AA omega-6 is going to give rise to the majority of our pro-inflammatory eicosanoids, and on our omega-3 side, the EPA and the DHA derivatives are going to give rise to our anti-inflammatory eicosanoids, which is going to be important to note. So I've mentioned the word eicosanoid before, and what I mean by that is that's just kind of an overall name given to signaling molecules. And so prostaglandins then are kind of a category of an eicosanoid. Specifically, they are a group of physiologically active lipid compounds that function in both the promotion and resolution of inflammation in cells in the body. So as I've mentioned so far, we're going to have some of these that are involved in inflammation and some of these that are involved in the resolution of that inflammation, kind of a dual component there. So there's going to be three main types that we're going to be talking about today. First one is our PGE1. This is going to work hand in hand with PGE2 in the sense that they're going to be kind of opposites. So this PGE1 is going to act as our vasodilator and help in the resolution of inflammation. And its job is to block the toll-like receptor on the cell and prevent entry of PGE2. So then our PGE2 is going to be the one that's responsible for the majority of our inflammation in the body. This prostaglandin sends a message of what I would describe as war and inflammation into our cell nucleus and our DNA. Now, this isn't always bad. Sometimes we need inflammation in the body, such as when we have a fever that gets induced when we're sick to help with the healing process. It's important to note that it is bad when we have too much of this PGE2 and inflammation, or that it's constant, in the sense that kind of unbridled PGE2 can do things such as turn our growth genes on, leading to cancer, things like that. And it can also suppress our T cell receptor signaling. So just kind of important to note there that this is kind of a dangerous PGE2 out of all of them to have unchecked. And its job, it's going to go in through that toll-like receptor on the cell. So PGE1 and PGE2 kind of go back and forth in that way. And we'll see a visual on this in just a second. So PGE3 then kind of works a little bit more autonomous compared to the other two. This one is going to travel directly into the cell nucleus without having to go through that toll-like receptor, and instead it's going to actually tap the PPAR receptor and get to go directly in that way. And this is a really good one. It's going to promote peace and stability of the cell. So these are our three types of prostaglandins. So here is a picture that I've drawn showing a cell. We see the mitochondria in the cell, the nucleus with DNA in it, and then listed there in the middle of the cell membrane we see our omega-6, kind of our three main ones in purple, DGLA, GLA, and AA, and then two of our main omega-3 fatty acids that we're going to be talking about, EPA and DHA. And then beneath that, we see our three different PGEs that are created. And as you can see with the arrows coming out, they're each created from a certain omega-6 or omega-3 or a combination. So first we have so there they are, shown there. First, we have our PGE1, and so our PGE1 is going to be made from a combination of DGLA from omega-6 and EPA from omega-3. If you follow the purple line to the right, it's going to go over, and its main job is blocking that toll-like receptor so nothing can get in. We have our PGE2, which is just created from AA, just from our omega-6. And that's the one that we wanted to be careful about of having too much unbridled PGE2 created, because that's going to go over and try to get in that toll-like receptor in blue. If it gets in, it's going to tap our NFKB and go straight to our DNA, kind of bringing that message of war and inflammation with it. And so you can see there kind of that visual of the PGE1 versus the PGE2. And then we have our PGE3, which goes to the left. It's created just from our omega-3s, EPA, and DHA. And it's going to go over directly into the cell by tapping that PPAR receptor and getting entry in to bring a nice message of peace and stability. So I think this is a pretty good visual, and it's important to note that, as I had mentioned previously, diet kind of plays a role. And so if our diet is only ever omega-6, then we're going to get a lot of that AA omega-6 and a lot of that PGE2, and then not as much as that PGE3 that you can see coming only from omega-3, as well as not as much PGE1 if our omega-3 again is limited. So that's how diet plays a role there. So as we've touched on already, arachidonic acid, abbreviated as AA, the one that is involved in the production of PGE2, is what we're going to focus on for just a second. Again, it's an unsaturated omega-6 fatty acid found everywhere in our cell membranes. And what's important to note about this one is that it undergoes metabolism by the cyclooxygenase, a COX enzyme, in order to produce our PGE2. So that's just that one that we're looking at right now from that beginning kind of initial photo. And so what's important to discuss today is the role of aspirin in the body. And the reason why I pointed out the arachidonic acid is because PGE2 is going to kind of hit this specific omega-6 hard, and I'll kind of show that here in just a second. So the role of aspirin is to block the channel during metabolism and prevent prostaglandin synthesis of all PGEs, even the good ones, and thus reduce inflammatory response and reduce pain in the body. And so aspirin donates an acetyl group to a serine residue that lies along the path to the active site, thereby blocking the channel. And so just in this arachidonic acid, again, this omega-6, before it's created there, shown there in that line down to PGE2, it goes through the cyclooxygenase COX enzyme and its metabolism process to create PGE2, which is why it's important, because aspirin is called a COX inhibitor, because it inhibits that cyclooxygenase, both COX-1 and COX-2, shown there with that red X. And so no prostaglandins are being able to be created because it's wiping out all of them, and it's specifically targeting that PGE2, that main inflammation one. And so that is why aspirin does a great job. It blocks our inflammation because it blocks that production of arachidonic acid AA to its prostaglandins. And so aspirin's really helpful in that way. The only reason, as I mentioned, it's sometimes dangerous for a long time use or whatever is because it's also going to wipe out the other PGEs in that cascade because of their relationship and the relationship of those NSAID class of medication, again, blocking those cyclooxygenases. So that's kind of an overview. I hope you learned a lot and kind of understand the relationship a little bit more between prostaglandins and inflammation in the body, as well as what aspirin looks like kind of as a factor in there.